We are recording this seminar to allow others who can't make it today to view and for yourself to review and recap at a later date. If you wish to ask a question, please raise your hand. And while you're not asking questions, we ask if you can mute your microphone and turn off your camera when not talking. Afterwards, a short questionnaire will be issued out to all the attendees. We'd appreciate it if you could just quickly fill it in. There's not many questions, and get the results back to us. They help us and they help Unicorn on future events. So without further ado, I shall hand you over to our people at Unicorn. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I will share my screen at first. Now you should probably see my presentation and I can start. So welcome to our second webinar, which is targeted to ECCo on UNIX. You want to start, Lucas?
Yeah, so hello, I'm IT project manager for ECCo. Previously, I was also maintenance specialist for ECP3, ECP4 and TDX, and since 2019, I'm project manager also from the development part of ECCo.
Okay, my name is Anna Langrova. I'm IT project analyst and PMO project management office, and since 2019 I am analyst of ECCo development. For the agenda, we will go through prerequisites and general information such as minimum hardware requirements, firewall flows, deployment types, and so on. After that, we will go through upgrade of ECP endpoint and toolbox and also Java. And after that, we will go through installation, configuration, and registration of ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox on Unix. So, prerequisites and general information. We will use these 4 guides, which is ECP upgrade guide and installation guide, and after that EDX upgrade guide and installation guide. Description of minimum hardware requirements. Here you can see estimations of hardware requirements, but please note that they may be changed according to your performance requirements. We also recommend to use virtual machines, which can be resized when more resource is necessary. And also, this no change was done compared to previous version of ECCo. So we can see some minimum hardware requirements for endpoint, which is 4 cores of CPU, 8 GB of RAM, and 40 GB of HDD. And for toolbox, we can see 2 cores of CPU, 4 GB and 20 GB. Also, please note that real hardware requirements may depend on message traffic of endpoint and toolbox. Okay, necessary network flows opened in firewall. Before processing with any installation of ECCo components, you need to open flows. Okay, we have one new arrival. You need to open flows on firewall to enable communication between those components. It means ECCo components and their external databases. As you can see here, those ports are set by default. For endpoint, there is one inbound port, one outbound, and one for both. And for toolbox, there is one inbound port and one for both. So these ports need to be enabled or opened before installation. ECCo uses 2 communication protocols, which is AMQPS and HTTPS. AMQPS is used for messaging and HTTPS is used for REST APIs and graphical user interface. And we have two deployment types, single one and a high availability mode. For standalone deployment, no other services are required, such as database. Okay, I think last guest arrived. No database, external database is needed, but it's still possible to use it. And standalone deployment is the simplest option for installation. Otherwise, we have high availability deployment, which consists of shared external database and at least two ECP EDX component deployments, which you can see at this picture. Here is a database and two ECP components. When one of the components goes down, the system will continue to function because the other one will start up. For supported databases and preparation before installing ECCo-SP, ECCo-SP can be configured to use embedded database, which is managed by ECP EDX application and does not need any additional setup. Alternatively, you can use an external database, but that must be installed and configured before starting the installation of ECCo-SP. Here you can see that we support 4 databases, which is Oracle version 12 and 19, MS SQL Server 2016, MySQL 5 and 8, and PostgreSQL 9 and 13. MySQL version 8 is new in Spring release, and also PostgreSQL is new in version 13 for this release. Here you can see default ports because again you need to open flows in firewall for these ports. So these are set by default. And as preparation before installing ECCo-SP, your database needs to be installed and configured properly, and also creation of application schema and configuration of user access is needed. So obtaining ECCo-SP installers, you can download ECCo-SP clients, which is ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox, on those two URLs, which is ENTSO-E data ECP or ENTSO-E data EDX. For ECCo-SP central components, you need to get access for ENTSO-E share which is granted by Christophe Montoise. And for component codes, before the installation, you need to prepare the specific component code for registration of your component. It must be unique within each ECP network. And we use energy identification coding, AIDS scheme mostly. More information you can find on this website, which is provided by ENTSO-E. Specifically, vcode, something like that, is used for identification of the locality, and it can be used for the component code of ECP or ECP. This code is issued by a local issuing office or central issuing office, which is ENTSO-E. So this was the general information on prerequisites. In case you have any questions, just ask now. Okay, so we will continue with the main part, which is upgrade and installation of those two components. First, we will go through upgrade, and after that, installation, configuration, and registration. So here you can see a plan for upgrade. At first, we will display graphical user interface of an existing version, and after that we will stop ECP EDX, upgrade Java to Java 11, upgrade ECP, change some configuration files, upgrade EDX, again update configuration of EDX. After that we will remove Java 8 and start both applications, which will end with displaying a graphical user interface again and sending and receiving some messages via ECCo. The whole process we will use our 4 guides: upgrade, installation for ECCo guides. So we will start with ECP upgrade guide. And as I said, I will show you graphical user interface. So as you can see, here we have ECP endpoint with code Zebra, which is on version 4.7.2, which is fall release. And here we have EDX toolbox with the same code, which is again Zebra, which is only version 1.8.2. We can, for example, request the configuration file. As you can see, the time changed to actual time, which means everything is working correctly. We can also send some message from ECP, for example, to Tiger. I will use webinar as a message type and send some test file. As you can see, the message is correctly received. Both components are working. So we can start with upgrade. We will move to the step 2, which is stopping EDX and ECP, which is also in our documentation. We are here at this chapter, upgrade on UNIX. The first step is to start the component before upgrade. So I will just take this command and go to the server. Here I will put it, and also I will do the same for EDX toolbox. So now both components should be stopped. As you can see, yeah. So I will go back to our presentation, and now is the time to upgrade Java to Java 11. We will again use our guide. So we can start with this command, which is Java version, and we will check the version which is actually there right now. As you can see, Java version 8 is used right now. So we can start with upgrading. We will use the second command, which is in our ECP upgrade guide. And yes. So Java was installed correctly, it's completed. Now, according to ECP upgrade guide, we can't uninstall Java 8 because we need to go through upgrade of ECCo components first. Yeah, and we will go back to our presentation because we have successfully upgraded Java to Java 11. And now we will go through upgrade of ECP endpoint, which is by this command rpm u. So I will go to our folder where the new version of application is prepared already, and we'll go with this command rpmu and a new rpm file for new version, which is Spring version. Okay, as we can see, ECP endpoint has been successfully installed and registered as a service. According to our plan, now we have to check or update configuration of ECP, which is also the next step in our ECP upgrade guide. In case the configuration wasn't changed before, it will be replaced by the new one. That means that we won't have to change the parameters, which I will show you. So we will open ECP properties on our server, which is in etc, and here. The change is that we have to change the logging.file to logging.file.name, but we will see that it's already done because the configuration was replaced. Okay, I can go down. Sorry, I will open it again. Yeah, it is here, but I will make it smaller because the TV is the TV has other setup of. So we can see that the two parameters are already changed to logging.file.name and logging.file.path, and also these synchronization parameters are removed, which has to be done. So we won't change anything in this configuration file, and we will move to the next one, which is etc systemd system and this ECP endpoint service. So I will go to etc, systemd, system. I will refresh the page and go to ECP endpoint service. Here is one parameter which needs to be updated, but this configuration has been already replaced because there was no change. So this is the parameter we want for this version, as is described here. This is the final state we want, so no change of configuration on our side right now. So according to our presentation, we checked that logging parameters, synchronization parameters, and Spring parameter are correctly done or prepared in our configuration. And the next step is to add new user to users properties of ECP, because it's a prerequisite of ENTSO-E toolbox. It can be also found, I will show you afterwards, in ENTSO-E documentation. So I will go back to etc, ECP endpoint, refresh, and open users. Here I will add new user, which is toolbox. So this is done, and we can continue with upgrading of EDX. So I will go to EDX upgrade guide, As I said before, not only displays, but I'm not sure right now. Somewhere is the chapter when you have ECP and EDX on the same server, that you have to, yeah, it's here. When you have ECP and EDX on the same server, you have to add the new user, which is toolbox. That's what I done a minute ago. So we will start with upgrading EDX toolbox. It's already stopped. We have upgraded Java to Java 11. So we can use this command rpmu and start with upgrade.
Anna, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We have a question on the comment
Sure.
regarding the EDX, plus also Patrick's got his hand raised. So if you want to look at the question on the comments.
Sure. So we can start with Patrick.
I have, when I installed or updated ECP, I also noticed in the documentation that I had to redeploy a WAR file. You just didn't do that. Isn't this necessary anymore? Or
Sorry, which file?
It was necessary to redeploy ECP module.war.
It's not needed, but maybe it's the installation where you have own Tomcat and you are deploying just this application or Tomcat application.
No.
But this deploying of ECP module.var was never in the upgrade guide.
Do you have it anywhere in upgrade guide, this step?
I saw it somewhere in the in one of the files. I can try to check and find and give you an update.
Yeah. If you can send us an email regarding this, we can check it.
But it's not in the upgrade guide currently, or neither was before, so.
Okay. Yeah. It's not necessary then. Thank you.
Or there is the chapter.
Yeah, just this redeploying of plugins like receive handler, send handler, or archive handler, but it's not called as unzip ECP underscore module var. Yeah. So. Yeah, in case you are using some receive handlers or send handlers or archive handlers, you need to unzip ECP underscore module.var manually, then put this receive handler or any handler to the lib folder, and after that you can start application. But it's not like redeploying of ECP application.
Yeah, it's just we can skip it because we have no custom receive send or archive handlers installed.
Okay.
Okay, so other questions? Yeah.
I guess no other questions.
They are in comments, in chat.
Yeah.
This one is for EDX. Can you just raise your hand if you have any question right now? Because it's a little bit confusing in a chat to put it right in the presentation. So if you have any question right now, just ask, or if you have something according to EDX and so just ask when the time is right, please. it's better than go through chat every 5 minutes.
Yeah. Giovanni, regarding your question, during upgrade, it is not necessary to create any schema. So the current configured is used.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's it. I was at the point where we can start with upgrading EDX toolbox, which is here, upgrade EDX. So we will use the same command, which is rpm u, but we will choose EDX install, which is Spring version. And the application has been successfully installed and registered as a service. Now the other step is to update configuration of EDX because we have changed the configuration before it is not replaced, and we will go through updating those parameters, which is again in EDX upgrade guide. So this is the first step, and now we have to update configuration. Firstly, EDX properties. So it's in etc, EDX toolbox, and EDX properties. And we have to update these two parameters. First one to login.file.name, and the second one to login.file.path, which is the first configuration. I will now save the file and close it. And the second configuration is in EDX toolbox service. We have to change spring.config.location to spring.config.additional location. I will just copy the parameter, and I will go to etc system EDX toolbox. I'll refresh the page, and here is the parameter. I will replace it with the new one. So here is the additional location, and that's it. I will save the file and go back to our presentation. So configuration is updated, logging parameters and Spring are done successfully. So now is the time to remove Java 8. So I will go back, for example, to ECP upgrade guide, and here is the step that we have to remove Java 8. So I will use the first command. Yes. And now I will use the second command. Yes. And now I will check the version of Java, and as you can see, Java Open EDK 11 is used now, which is correct. So we have successfully removed Java 8, and we can continue with start of EDX and ECP. So in upgrade guide we are here. We will again copy the command or use the same one as before, and start ECP endpoint, And in EDX upgrade guide, use this command. And also start EDX toolbox. Oh, we have to reload our systems.
Yeah, due to change in the env-conf file.
Yeah. So now we can start EDX toolbox. Yeah, so endpoint is up. Can go to its user interface. As we can see, Zebra is now on version 4.8.0. We will also wait for Toolbox. And now EDX Toolbox is on version 1.9.0, which is Spring version. We can also send a message from this is Zebra, so to Tiger, for example, we will use webinar 2. Oh, sorry, webinar 2. I will send some zip file. And the message is received. I have Tiger opened here. So as we can see, the message is also here. I will also send a message from EDX Toolbox again to Tiger Toolbox with webinar 3. So the message is received. And yeah, here. Sorry, it's locked out. Here we can see message webinar 3. So our communication is working and we are currently at the end of upgrade because I displayed a graphical user interface and version and already sent and received messages via ECP and EDX. So now if you have any questions according to upgrade, ask now. Yeah, Adriano?
Good morning, Anna. Good morning, Robert. Thank you for the training. One question regarding after the upgrade of ECP and EDX toolbox, next step will be upgrade of PDM. But the question is, we need to install OPDM. There is not an upgrade of OPDM.
Actually, we are not so much familiar with OPDM client.
Okay.
So,
because in the last version of OPD, PD 3.0, we experienced a lot of problem of communication between EDX Toolbox and OPDM. And we remain about 2 months without a PD production environment due to this connectivity problem between EDX Toolbox and OPDM. I would like to avoid this type of problem this time. So only to know if we there are some action, some or remedial action, if you want, in order to avoid this type of preventive remedial action, in order to avoid this type of problems. I don't know, in general question, because this training is regarding ECCo, ECP and the EDX, but I don't know if also for OPDM and the connectivity test between EDX Toolbox and OPDM, it's possible to have live training or a session live. I don't know.
Hi, Andrea.
Yeah.
If you've got some good suggestions, which that sounds like a good one to have on some additional training, we'll take that into consideration. There is other training going on OPDM, and you can view those in the training catalogue, which Elaine can tell you how to get. But this specific webinar today is just about ECCo-SP and the upgrade and installation of the UNIX, ECP and EDX. But by all means, drop an email to myself or Elaine with your suggestions, and we'll throw them into the pot.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
So, any other questions to upgrade? If not, we will move to clean installation and configuration and registration of ECP and EDX. So I will just close this server. And we will move to this one. As you can see, nothing is here on this server. It's just prepared for our ECP and EDX. So we will start with installation of ECP, which is here in ECP installation guide, chapter installation on Linux. And the prerequisite is to have RPM file copied to the server, to have prepared Java, which we can check by command Java version. As we can see, Java version 11 is already prepared. Yeah, and that's it. And we can start with this command rpmi, and we will install ECP endpoint. So I will go to the folder where our install is prepared. And now I will use rpmi and ECP. We can see version Spring, which is 4.8. So we will go for installation. It can take a few seconds. Endpoint has been successfully installed and registered as a service. According to our presentation, we will now set encrypted passwords. But firstly, we need to use patch.
Yeah, actually, we found an issue with the encryption password generator script, where was incorrect JavaScript library used. So we have now script to fix it, and the issue itself will be resolved in summer release.
So I applied our small patch, and now I will go to etc ECP endpoint, and here we will find here we will find this script configure passwords, which we will use. So now we can choose which passwords we will use. We will do encrypted for technical accounts and user accounts. Now we have to choose encryption key. Do the same, following by algorithm, encryption algorithm. We will use the recommended one, which is this one. And now we can fill out the first password, which is for administrator login. Now for authentication key store. For internal broker. for key stores in database. So this is ready. And according to our presentation, we can now reload a daemon of systems CTL and start the application. This process of passwords is also in ECP installation guide. It's here the chapter custom passwords. This is the part when this script is described, and that's what we done. So now we can continue with starting of ECP endpoint. Firstly, I will reload the daemon because we changed the configuration of the service, and now I will start the ECP endpoint. So we will wait a few seconds for it to start, and we will go to our presentation. If application will correctly start, we will continue with registering of ECP endpoint. In the installation guide, there is a chapter for this, which is ECP endpoint registration and functional smoke test. Yes, endpoint successfully started. We will log in and continue with registration process. I will use registration key store.jks, which is provided by the administrator of component directory, as well as password to this key store. Now we have to fill out the URL of component directory, which I will copy and just replace one number. Our component directory is zoo. In this case, we will check the connectivity, which is successful, and continue. Now we have to fill out data and component information for the endpoint. This endpoint is Panda. In organization zoo, contact person is Red Panda. Email this and contact phone. Now there is one new feature thing. We have to read and check the GDPR disclaimer, which is new in this version, in Spring version. And now we can submit the request. The ECP endpoint will now reload its configuration for the first time, and we can move to approving of this endpoint on component directory, because in this case I am the administrator of component directory. So I will approve our request. And now the endpoint has to reload its configuration again after synchronization with component directory. So we will for a second go back to our presentation and wait for it. Because ECP endpoint is registered, we will now change the runtime configuration of ECP, which is the prerequisite of EDX and can be found in EDX installation guide. At the beginning, yes. Here you can find those 3 parameters that has to be enabled in ECP configuration to make ECP and EDX working together. So our endpoint is reloading. We will start with creating new path. We have the broker, Gorilla broker. I will choose the date because of server date and UCT. So it is. The path is for any message type and all sender via Gorilla Broker. Now we can export the configuration, but I have it already prepared for Panda. So I will show you, these are the three parameters that you need to enable in this configuration. It's IMQP enabled to true and to send handlers parameters. And after that, we will import the new configuration to endpoint. It's been successfully uploaded, and we will reload its configuration. Yeah, that's successfully done. So that's the first prerequisite for EDX. And the other one is the one we already did in the upgrade. It's adding the new user to users properties, because it's again the prerequisite for EDX. So I will close this server and go to etc. Okay. To ECP endpoint, and here in users we have to add the new user. We will copy the password because it's encrypted from the endpoint just for this session to show you. So I will save this file.
Yeah, and we can see that the files were encrypted by the script. They are not in plain text here.
This is also in our installation guide. It's this step where you have to add the new user to users properties of ECP. So that's already done, and we can continue with our next step, which is to restart ECP because its configuration has been changed. So I will go to our server and just update the command to restart, and I will restart ECP endpoint. And we can continue with the next step, which is installation of ENTSO-E. Here in our ENTSO-E installation guide, it's the chapter for UNIX, which is here. We have met the prerequisites for endpoint, and RPM file is already on the server. Also Java is fine and firewall is fine, so we can continue with RPMI. Where the file is. With RPMI, EDX, as you can see, the Spring version is here. So EDX Toolbox has been successfully installed and registered as a service. According to our plan, we now have to set custom passwords, which means that we have to use the patch again for EDX Toolbox. And now we will continue with regular process, which is to go to etc. Toolbox directory, and we will use our configure passwords script. So passwords will be encrypted and encrypted. Encryption key. It's the same process for ECP endpoint. Encryption algorithm and passwords for administration login. authentication key store, internal broker, and database connection. And that's it. So according to our plan, now we have to change ports for EDX, which can be found in EDX installation guide. It's the chapter here, EDX toolbox installed on Unix, and it's the main chapter, installation on Unix on same machine with ECP endpoint. So we have to go to this path where the file env.conf is, and change the ports from 8 to 9, for example. So here's my WinSCP. So we will go to the systemd, system, EDX toolbox service, just refresh it. And now we have to change all these ports from 8 to 9. Oh yeah, this should be correct. So we can close this file. Now, according to our presentation, we have to change configuration of EDX, specifically codes, port, alias, user, and password. So we will go through that. This is the chapter of EDX toolbox configuration, chapter 7, specifically configuration of EDX properties. So we will go back to etc. Have to refresh it to EDX toolbox, here to EDX properties, and we have to change the code of toolbox, which is the same as for endpoint, which is Panda. We have the code for EDX catalog Lion. Now we have to go down. Here it's needed to change the port because we have ECP and EDX on the same server. Also to change EDX module out to ECP module out. And we have to change this password because we added new user to ECP properties, but the password is changed. So I will also open user properties of ECP endpoint and copy the password we added. And I will put it here for ECP broker out. Yeah. So we have port, alias, password, user, everything looks okay. I will save the file, go back to our presentation. Yeah, I think we changed everything, and now it's the time to replace the key store of EDX toolbox by the key store of ECP endpoint. So it's in
this key store is used for AMQP-S, for the secured AMQP connection between toolbox and endpoint. So for simplicity, we are taking authentication key store from ECP endpoint and putting it into EDX toolbox.
We can delete the old one, the default one, and replace it by the new one from ECP endpoint, which just needs to be renamed. Store. Now we have to also change the group and owner because currently it is ECP endpoint, and we have to change it to 2020, which is EDX toolbox. you can see, EDX toolbox. So now it's correct. And because we changed ports, configuration, and replaced keystore.jks and changed its group and over, we can now reload a daemon and start EDX. So I will use the command here to reload configuration, and now I will just copy the command from EDX installation guide. Yeah, we configured EDX toolbox, so now we can start it by using this command. And according to our plan, the only thing remaining is to display graphical user interfaces of those components and its versions, and to send and receive some messages via ECP EDX, sorry. So I will go to the server, reload the page. Everything looks okay. And now we have ECP endpoint on version. Sorry, we restarted it. Yes. Yeah, so we have ECP endpoint on version 4.8 and EDX toolbox on version 1.9. And we will first request the configuration from service catalog, which is correct, the time changed. So now we can send message, for example, again to Tiger with, I don't know, test. And I will use some test file. So the message is successfully received. Here on Tiger, we can also see the message from Panda, and we will do the same from endpoint. So for example, to Tiger, test 2. Yeah, the message is received successfully, and on Tiger we should see it in our inbox. It's this message, test 2. So our communication is working between ECP and EDX, and everything looks fine, which is the time for questions for this installation part. So if you have any questions to this part or to the whole webinar, just ask them, because that's all from me right now. And if there is no question, I want to thank you for your attention and give a word to Paddy back.
Okay, Hannah, that's very good, very, very useful. Any questions from anyone on the floor? Okay, as I said at the beginning, we'll get the video. Oh, one question coming in. Yes. You on mute.
Okay, hello. Hi. I see on the ECP upgrade guide that we have some step about the after the 5.2 character.
ECP or EDX upgrade guide?
ECP upgrade guide. And either EDX, there are some some steps there are after performing the upgrading of the ECP. I see other steps to perform on the guide. We have to perform this step either.
This is for allowing automatic start after the server startup, which is optional. For example, this is what we went through updating of configuration, or in our case, we just checked the configuration?
Yeah, in our case, in case that the configuration file or any file is not changed from the previous installation, then RPM installer does not create RPM new file, but it directly overrides the original one.
Yeah, we went through this chapter and also through this chapter, and we started our application. This is just for verification of status of the start, so I am not sure which chapter you mean.
I see it. For example, the steps 7 on the chapter 7 or 2.
Chapter 7?
Yeah. You can see that I reiterated the stuff of the for the Docker environment, broker configuration part.
Yeah, we just went through ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox, which are on client side.
This webinar is not targeted to installation upgrade of ECP broker or component directory or service catalog.
Okay, but the upgrade had to be performed.
Yeah, but usually it's on the central part. For example, of CGM, it's hosted in Chorizo and TSCnet RSCs, and they are managing upgrade of these components. Nevertheless, the steps are, at least for component directory and service catalog, they should be very similar. And for ECP broker, there is now change that ECP broker in previous versions, it was delivered just as a char file, and you had to download ActiveMQ from the internet and configure it. But from now, there is also available RPM installer.
Okay.
And regarding Docker environment, there are just notes what to change in the broker configuration of Docker Compose.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Matthew, did you have a question you were typing?
No.
Okay. Okay, any further questions from anybody? Right, well, thank you very much for attending. As I said to you at the beginning, we'll get the video released out somewhere on the platform, and instructions will come out from Elaine next week. Appreciate you all coming today. See you soon. Thank you. Lucas and Anna, could you just hold on? Bye,
Sure.
everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.